Hi, my name is David Ellis. I'm doing a reflective blog summary on what I learned in my recently completed class from Walsh University. The class was Organizational Behavior. It was my second MBA class, first OB, Organizational Behavior class, but it was very interesting. I got a lot out of it, and it probably stems from a little bit of my foundation, a little bit in accounting. My undergrad's from Youngstown State in accounting, obviously, but then I also took a lot of psychology classes, kind of just to relate to the people I'm working with and just kind of try to understand people, I guess. But this class actually tied in both of those kind of things, so I found it very interesting. The first thing I'm going to bringing up is the kind of like the business environment and how it's constantly adapting and changing over time. The organizational behavior within that environment needs to be aware of certain, nuances that change and certain things that change within the organization. The first thing that I kind of talked about a little bit is the differences between cultures. Is kind of like I did individual research on psychological contracts. And how they differ across cultures. Individually, my psychological contract with my company, Synchrony Financial, which I currently work for, changed over time. It pretty much went from, me worrying about the resources, like the base pay and the wages and the salary and the benefits I was getting out of the company and maybe the possible opportunities. But then now it's starting to focus on just the opportunities where some of the certain things became almost expected because I just show up every day and do what I have to do to kind of succeed in my work. But at the same time now I'm more worried about that next step in my development with the company. I want to improve, the company as a whole, so we can reach higher goals and work with their clientele a little bit to kind of meet their customer needs and adapt to the changing business world. Across cultures are kind of different. We're very individualistic here in the United States, but there's collectivism, which carries about the general whole more than each person. I see that a little bit in the family kind of thing, atmosphere in my own life, but it's more or less kind of that look out, trying to improve myself for that next kind of stage. That's probably why I'm going back for the MBA program. I've always had kind of ambitious goals and kind of try to raise the bar for myself, but within my personalities, differs across from the next person, my neighbors and my coworkers and stuff like that. I'm very introverted by nature and by who I am, but I could be extroverted by the curiosity aspect to my life. I always like to learn different things and learn that next thing and kind of develop myself. But within an organization, there's differing personalities. The personalities differ across because everybody brings strengths and weaknesses through their own personalities. Somebody might talk more, or somebody might lead more, or be more emotionally strong or intelligent kind of thing. But there are weaknesses within everyone too that need to be developed. There's some weaknesses that some people will not develop, but some you can improve a little bit so they're just not as weak. That's kind of where management comes into play too as well. Management, you're going to kind of try to get the most out of the strengths out of each person. You want to delegate authorities and stuff like that based on what people's strengths are until they kind of meet up for the best result. But there's weaknesses where the development back again, where you're going to try to improve a little bit, so maybe somebody's not as weak in an area where they think they are. Structure has a big thing to do with management within the organization. I always think of structure within an organization, the hierarchy, the pyramid within where there's certain levels of the organization, and there's management that manage this level, and there's management in between levels. Kind of go to the next step. And a lot of organizations, but that's not necessarily the same across each company. But within that hierarchy of structures, there's like a rewards and punishments kind of system too, to where at Synchrony Financial, we actually get monthly bonuses, and at the end of the year we get like an appraisal, and every April we get a little bit of a merit raise kind of thing based on how we performed the previous year. So rewards and that system is it motivates you to make sure you hit your numbers, and you're constantly kind of a little bit improving each year. I mean, the punishment kind of system, kind of, from my experience, is pretty much, just missing out on the basic requirements. There are some punishments, if you don't show up to work and you don't, meet your numbers, and you're missing out on those basic requirements, so you might be punished, and there's consequences to those. Obviously within the structure there's positives and negatives, of each organization and how they meet. Another company is going to benefit off of some other company's negative, but at the same time that positive in the organization might be something that meets somebody else's personality a little bit different, to relate back to the personality. But within that structure, there's also, like I consider them like structural holes, but they could be filled with like conflict. So that conflict, on the base term, it's kind of a negative word if you think about it. When you think of conflict, you kind of maybe think about negative consequences and what's going to happen when you make a certain bad decision or something like that based on conflict. But that conflict you have with one another and within relationships can be built upon within an organization as a positive spin on it. You can have like different departments arguing about like the budget or something like that, but then they eventually maybe collaborate to reach what the organization wants as a whole, not just to kind of for the individual. They kind of collaborate together to make sure they reach whatever goals or objectives they need to be met within a certain given period. The competition, in conflict, it's kind of good and it can be constructed on, obviously, but those competing goals and competing for resources and cultural differences put on that conflict so so you can actually so it doesn't break apart. With conflict, it can be obviously I'm focusing a lot on the positive, but there could be a negative if there's too much conflict. That's where management comes in again to add to the to adjust and make sure conflict is managed and collaborated against, and not just kind of somebody sacrificing for the overall for the company or for their individual needs or something like that. Management comes in and leadership rates in, so that you're constantly building on the kind of the conflict within the company, I guess, what happens within the company. Managing and leading is kind of the way to keep development and motivation within the organization high. If, like, back to the conflict, if you have a lot of conflict, motivation, it might start diminishing, like a diminishing kind of return on that. You kind of, constantly missing out on things, and it's kind of causing more turmoil than it's actually building upon within the organization. And, that developmental progress, as long as you're kind of developing along the way, sometimes you have to take a step back to go 2 steps forward kind of thing. And within, the same within like a global company or in working with, different cultures, I think there's opportunities there within organizations. So when you communicate and you operate in different countries and cultures, you need to have that understanding. You can't just rely on building on it as it goes. You have to be like, oh, well, have a brief understanding of that culture and, know the sudden differences so you're not miscommunicating, which can actually deter what you're kind of trying to accomplish within, meeting with other cultures and stuff like that. But overall, the class, was very interesting. I found it more tying in the business environment to psychology and kind of understanding individuals as a whole, but then applying it to the organization and separating it into groups, or putting that positive spin on the group as a team, is very informative. And going forward, I'm going to probably rely on a little bit more, just because I know the differences among people will build and develop who I am as a person and whatever the organization I work for. But that's pretty much all. You have a good day.